Hello everyone, in this video I'm going to be taking a look at the LH7P monitor from Portkeys. Now, much like the LH5P2 I reviewed last year, this monitor offers wireless control of certain cameras including the Sony FX3, which is what I'm going to be using it with. I'm going to be showing you in detail all the features this monitor offers, as well as talking about my thoughts on it and who it might be a good fit for. For disclosure, Portkeys sent me this monitor in order to make this review. However, this video isn't being sponsored by Portkeys, so they don't get to see the video before it's released or have any say in its production or my findings. Let's start by having a look at what you get in the box. So opening the box, we find a compact plastic hard case, which is always a welcome addition just to stop the screen getting damaged when you pack the monitor away. Opening up the case, you'll find the monitor itself, along with a few accessories beneath the lower piece of foam. Portkeys have included a cold shoe swivel mount, which is a nice bonus. This seems good quality, and what's especially nice about it is that it has the specific anti-swivel lugs that are required by the monitor to stop it twisting when mounted to a camera. Also in the box there's an HDMI cable, an Allen key for adjusting the swivel mount, a cleaning cloth, and a 1GB USB memory stick. The USB memory stick contains the latest user manual, but you could also use this for, installing the latest firmware or transferring LUT files if you prefer. The LH7P is primarily a polycarbonate and ABS plastic construction and is actually only 247 grams. The monitor is 176mm wide and 104mm tall. And at only 18.4mm thick, the LH7P is very thin. On top we've got 4 function buttons, a sliding switch to lock screen input, a sliding button for attaching and removing batteries, and the main power switch. The left and right sides both have a 1/4-20 mounting point with anti-swivel slots, which is great as it gives you a lot of mounting options. On the bottom there's a 7 to 24 volt DC in barrel connector, HDMI in, a 3.5mm headphone socket, a USB-A connector, a third mounting point, and then finally an HDMI out port. I really like that all the ports are on the bottom, as I find this helps with keeping cables out of the way when it's mounted to a camera. The back has a single MPF style battery mount, and there's a release catch in the battery mount that's operated using the sliding button on top of the monitor. The monitor boots up in around 11 seconds, which is similar to the LH5P2. The screen itself produces a good quality image, although I did have to tweak the colour settings a little to get it to a point where I felt it matched the colours shown on the camera's screen. The monitor can handle an input signal up to 4K at 30p. It does, however, only have a 1920 by 1080 screen. The LH7P does have a built-in fan, and it doesn't seem to be possible to control this at all, although it's not really that loud. I wouldn't want to mount this monitor right beside an on-camera mic for sure, although in a setting say where you're shooting an interview and you have the monitor mounted to the camera and the mic closer to the talent, it won't be a problem at all. It's not that loud. To test brightness, I ran the LH7P beside the LH5P2 in order to show the difference between the two monitors. The LH7P has a stated 1000 nit brightness, and I normally find 1000 nit monitors to be just about usable outside, although it can be tricky in direct sunlight. The little LH5P2 has got a 2200 nit brightness, which definitely makes it easy to see the colours and contrast when in bright environments. It's a shame the LH7P doesn't come with any options for mounting a sunshade, as that would really help a lot. One little problem that I did notice when doing this test was that the LH7P sends out its user interface via the HDMI output, which can be really confusing when using two Portkeys monitors. As far as I can see, there's no way to stop this happening, so this is something to consider if you need to use this monitor in combination with other HDMI hardware. Hopefully Portkeys can address this in a future firmware update. Swiping left or right on the screen toggles between the settings screen and the monitoring tools. Let's start by taking a look at the settings. The picture settings button brings up options at the bottom that allows you to adjust brightness, contrast, chroma, sharpness and tint. This is where you can dial in the colours of the display to suit your requirements. If you swipe the bottom bar to the left, you can also select various anamorphic options. and also input a custom anamorphic setting if you need something not covered in the provided options. You can also adjust the backlight here by tapping on the setting. You can also change the colour temperature of the display, which isn't something I find very useful. For me, it's much more important that the display is just showing the colour from the camera and the white balance set on the camera. I can't really see a reason why you'd want to change the colour temperature of just the display. Display flip allows you to flip the screen in both horizontal and vertical axis, although it's also possible to set these individually should you have a specific use case. The cog menu allows you to change the system language, perform a system reset, and you also have the option to display the battery level. You can also enable gesture zooming, which is a really handy feature, enabling you to just punch in on the screen using your fingers, much like you would when using something like an iPhone. I like that it displays the level of zoom on the screen so you know if you're punched in or not. There's also something called live mode. Now I couldn't find out what this does, and there's nothing in the Portkeys manual as far as I can see. If you know what this setting does, then please just leave me a comment below, as I'd be interested to find out. Next up is the LUT menu. In here you can select any LUTs that you've installed on the monitor, and you can also add new LUTs by transferring them over with a USB drive. If you want to see more details about doing that, then go and watch my LH5P2 review, because in there I go through the whole process. Next we have the ability to change the headphone volume, and then lastly there's an option for viewing the current system information, the total runtime of the monitor, and an option to initiate a firmware update. So let's swipe over and have a look at the monitor functions screen. Here you can see the monitoring tools down the left and right sides of the screen. The bar at the bottom changes depending on which of these is selected. By default, this bar shows the current HDMI input on the left, as well as various settings that affect the way the monitor is operating. If you're using 3D LUTs on the monitor, you have the option to choose if the 3D LUT is applied either before or after the monitoring tools. Next along you can see the currently selected LUT and the current monitor backlight level. You can tap here to cycle through the backlight levels if required. To the right, the cog icon allows you to edit the positions of the tools, and the slider icon allows you to adjust the currently selected tool. I've already configured the layout of the tools displayed on my monitor, which makes sense for me, but you can use the menu beneath the cog icon to adjust it to your preference. So first up, I've got peaking. You'll notice that you can activate or deactivate the tools either by pressing the appropriate icon or by using the toggle on the bottom bar. The peaking tool offers multiple style options, from standard original image with coloured edges through black and white, various grayscale options, and a full black image with just the in-focus peaking lines visible. You can change the sensitivity levels, making the lines more or less visible, and also select a preferred colour. Next up we've got zebras, which work really well. In here there are 3 zebra levels that can be enabled and configured independently. First is the low setting, where you define the IRE level you'd like highlighting in the shadows, and it can be set to any one of the 4 colours. The middle area is defined as an IRE level with an adjustable range down to plus or minus 1 IRE. This is very useful for monitoring skin tones, or for instance adjusting exposure using middle grey, and it can be set to any one of the 4 colours. The high levels can also be defined as a specific IRE. This is great because you can display all 3 zebra levels at the same time and apply a different colour to each. Next is false colour, which offers 2 modes. We've got ARRI or user. The ARRI mode is less overbearing, as it only highlights green and pink around typical skin tone levels, as well as levels closer to 0 and 100. It's worth noting that these are predefined IRE levels that cannot be adjusted though. The user setting shows a full range of colours and does allow you to adjust the under and over levels. However, there's no option to define the range for the intermediate levels. Next is the Luma waveform. With this you can adjust the transparency or make it fully opaque. You can adjust the brightness of the waveform, and then there's also an option to turn on exposure warnings. It's worth noting that the exposure warning level can't be adjusted though. It'd be great to see Portkeys add the ability to adjust these in a future update. You can also choose between two sizes or position the waveform in any of the four corners of the screen. One minor niggle with the waveform is that when you exit the menu system it doesn't move out of the way and it just sits there awkwardly higher up in the image. You'll see later that this isn't the case for all of the tools. The RGB waveform also offers control over transparency and brightness, as well as the same position options as the Luma waveform. Again, this one doesn't move out of the way when you close the menu either. Next is the histogram. This is nice and clear, and it's great that you can also set this to be transparent so it hides less of the shot. You can toggle between two sizes and again position in any of the four corners. Interestingly, with this one, it does reposition out of the way when you hide the menu, so I wonder why they didn't implement that with the waveform tools as well. Moving across to the right, we've got grids, and in here you can choose from 1 to 9 regions, and these can be in any of the four colours. Next are the aspect ratio guides. I really like the way Portkeys have implemented these. There's a lot of options here. If you need to visualise shooting vertical video, then the 9x16 option is great. I love that it's possible to apply a mask to the out of frame areas, as I find this really helps me with not being distracted by any out of frame elements. And if you want something that isn't covered with any of the included options, then you can also define a custom user setting. Next is the option to add a crosshair. Its position can be adjusted if you don't want it in the center, and it can be set to any one of the four colors. Next down we've got rectangle crop. This works much like the focus magnifier button on a camera and allows you to define an area and then punch into it. If you want to adjust this, you can press the resize option and then adjust the size of the box as well as its position. The position can be adjusted either by using the options on the bar at the bottom or by simply dragging the box on the screen. If you want to reset the box to its default position, then there's a reset button on the bottom bar as well. Next we have the 3D LUT control. This simply toggles on and off the currently selected LUT. You can't change the LUT from here though, that has to be done in the settings screen we looked at earlier. Finally on this side I've got audio meters. You get really nice audio meters that can be positioned at the top, the bottom or at the sides. You can adjust transparency or swap the left and right channels if you need to do that. So you can have multiple pages of these tools, and to go to the next page you just swipe up on the tool icons. On this next page I have tools that I tend to use less regularly. First up there's an option to adjust the display for HLG HDR input. Next up we've got a tool called Check Fields. Now this is actually named incorrectly because what this does is it allows you to check the colour channels in the video. Initially this is set to grayscale, but you can simply click on the red, green and blue patches to see those colours in the frame. Below that there's a weird tool called Vertical Extension. Now this isn't something I'm really familiar with, but it seems to allow you to define a start line and then stretch out everything past that line to fill the screen. The only thing I can think of where this would be useful is maybe you're trying to simulate converting a non-16:9 sensor to represent 16:9, but that's really just a guess. If you know where this helps, then again, let me know in the comments. Next is a really cool feature that allows you to capture a still image and record it to the connected USB drive. If I go to the next tool, you'll see that I can now select from any of the still images that I've recorded. I can then call one of those up and the monitor will display it transparent over the current video signal, which makes it really easy to line up the shot to match something you've recorded previously. When you see the plus icon, you can press that to assign another feature to that position. For example, I can assign this as a second control option for the audio meters. To remove a feature, you simply select it and then press the delete icon. It's worth noting that the first 4 tool positions are important because they can be controlled by the 4 buttons on top of the monitor. So given my layout here, I can control peaking with button 1, zebras with button 2. I can toggle through both types of false colour with button 3, and then I can access Luma waveform with button 4. Next, let's have a look at one of the best features of the LH7P, its ability to wirelessly control the camera as well as display information from the camera. First, let's go through how to connect the monitor to the FX3. Now this will vary from camera to camera, but I think the process should be similar. The first thing you need to do is go into the cameras menu and navigate to the network settings. From there, go into network option and look for a setting called access authentication settings. For this to work, you need to go into this and switch that to off. Don't worry, you'll still need to use a password to connect to the camera, but without switching this option off, you won't be able to control the camera with the monitor. Next, navigate to the main network menu and choose Smartphone Connect and Smartphone Connection. When you see the page appear telling you to launch a smartphone app, press button 4 on the FX3, which is the delete button. Once you've done that, the FX3 will display the connection information, including a password. On the Portkeys monitor, you swipe down to go into the camera control screen. Then select the camera icon and choose Add New Device. If all's been set correctly, you should see a new box appear on the bottom showing the camera's Wi-Fi network. Press that and enter the password shown on the camera. Once entered, press OK on the monitor and it should connect to the camera, and the menus will disappear on both the camera and the monitor. So we'll press on the monitor screen again to bring back the camera control interface. It's important to understand that this is a two-way control, so any changes you make on the monitor control the camera, and likewise any changes you make on the camera are reflected in the information shown on the monitor. Next, I'll go through all of the camera controls on the left of the menu. Throughout all of these, you'll have the start-stop button showing bottom left of the screen. And once you've set up a Wi-Fi connection, when you start recording, this turns red, but you also get a red line around the monitor, which I'm a huge fan of. This also stays visible once you exit out of the monitor's menu system. As you can see, this also appears when you start and stop recording on the camera itself. So top left, we've got shooting mode, and this allows you to choose between the various shooting modes available in the camera. I'll generally only use the 2 filming modes here, but it's great being able to switch in and out of S&Q mode directly from the monitor. The focus menu offers some useful options. The first button initiates an autofocus. This performs the same function as when you define a button on the camera to the AF feature. The next button allows you to control the touch focus settings on the camera. Pressing this cycles between the 3 modes: touch tracking, touch focus, and off. Touch focus allows you to focus on any part of the frame. However, for this to work best, you need to have a small focus area selected. Here I'm using expanded spot. It's worth noting that any setting you have in the camera for focus and tracking speed are still being used here. And because I've got my camera set up to focus quite slowly, just by touching the monitor here, I'm able to make the camera focus on these areas. Touch tracking allows you to touch anywhere on the monitor screen to start the camera tracking that area. It's worth noting that nothing's being displayed on the monitor itself to show the area being tracked. You'll need to look at the camera screen to see that. Once we're in touch tracking, the button on the monitor changes to cancel tracking, and then you can press that to cancel the tracking. The AF/MF button allows you to toggle between autofocus and manual focus. When it's yellow, it means that the camera's in autofocus. When it's not, it's in manual focus. The various arrows here allow you to manually control focus. However, with my Sony system, I find these too clunky to use. The single arrows barely do anything. The double arrows move focus incredibly slowly, and the triple arrows jump the focus in huge steps. So sliding to the next page, here you can find the focus areas. I've got my FX3 set up so that it only uses wide, zone and expanded spot, so only those three are shown here for me. If you have more enabled in your camera, then you'll see all of those as options. Next, we've got the ability to control iris, either by using the slider or the up and down arrows on the right. Obviously you need to be using a lens with electronic iris control to do this. I do prefer to use the manual iris ring on my Sony lenses that have them, and when I enable that you can see the option to change the setting disappears. The current iris setting is still shown on the screen though, which is useful. Shutter speed control works in the same way. It's worth noting here that even if you lock the shutter control on the FX3, it can still be changed using the monitor, so that's something to bear in mind. ISO also works in the same way, but only if you're not using Cine EI. If you're in Cine EI, the controls are not shown, which makes sense as you can only toggle between the base ISOs. If I switch the camera over to use flexible ISO though, then as you'll see the controls will appear and I can control the ISO from the monitor. I'll switch back to using Cine EI for now. The EV control allows you to set a plus or minus exposure compensation value if using one or more of the exposure parameters on auto. I'll switch to auto iris now on the FX3 by holding down the iris button. Once this is done, you can see that we can now control the exposure value, so I can increase exposure using this or decrease it as required. I'll switch back to manual iris control by holding the button again. Over on the top right there's a white balance control which shows the currently selected white balance mode as an icon. Pressing this allows you to choose between any of the currently available white balance settings. If you choose to shoot using the Kelvin option, then the CT or colour temperature button below becomes active, and you can then press that to dial in a Kelvin value. For the battery life tests, I used an NP550 equivalent battery rated at 2900 mAh. I had the LHP7 at maximum brightness. I wanted to compare it to the LH5P2, so I used the same type of battery in that, but with its brightness set to 5, which resulted in a similar display brightness. The LH7P ran for 1 hour and 43 minutes, and at that point it started flashing for around a minute before eventually shutting down. I reconnected the camera directly to the LH5P2, which managed to run for about another 10 minutes. With a bigger battery like an NPF970, you'd be looking at a runtime of around 4 to 5 hours on the LH7P. So in summary, I really like the additional screen size when shooting with the LH7P, and it doesn't feel that much bigger to me than the normal 5-inch monitors I use. I've been using the LH5P2 a lot since reviewing it last year. I love the fact that the monitor shows when the camera's recording, and I'll normally connect it wirelessly just for that. I do miss the more professional metal design of the LH5P2, however the cost of the LH7P does reflect this. At the time of recording this, the LH7P retails for around $340 in the US, and the smaller LH5P2 retails for $350, making the bigger monitor actually the less expensive option. But prices do change over time, so I'll post some links in the details below so that you can go and get the latest prices. Being ABS plastic, the LH7P is also very light, and having it on a setup like I've got here, it only adds around 250 grams or less than 9 ounces to the weight of the rig. The smaller LH5P2 does have some advantages though. As well as being more compact and rugged, it also offers a brighter screen, making it better for working in sunny conditions, as well as some additional power input options and remote control features. As noted earlier in the video, you'll want to bear in mind the issue it has with sending the user menu out via the HDMI out port. Hopefully that will be addressed quickly in a firmware update, and if it is, I'll make sure to update the video details below. I hope that was useful. If you have any questions, then please leave a comment. I do try to reply to every question and will gladly help if I can. Thanks loads for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one.